Hi, Sam Roberts here for ProRaster Scientific. Today I just want to show you some Fireline intensity data that's recently been released for the eastern states of Australia. So I came across this article on the ABC website, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, and they've showcased some data from the CSIRO and from an organisation that's called the National Bushfire Intelligence Capability. So these are scientific research organisations in Australia. So the article goes on to show you how they've prepared some data which demonstrate the risk of bushfire or wildfire in Australia, and how that's changing under different climate scenarios and so forth. So I went to their website, and it turns out you can acquire this Fireline intensity data. So what is this data? Well, it's measured in kilowatts per metre squared. So it's a measure of energy, the amount of intensity in a fire measured spatially across the continent. Now at the moment the data is only available for the eastern states. We don't have Western Australia, I don't know why, but you can download it, and they're quite large cloud optimized geotiffs. Each geotiff is about 36-37 gigabytes, so it's quite tricky to download, and so I prepared this in ProRaster Scientific to make more useful products, and we'll just go through that quickly. So let me bring up ProRaster Scientific. So this data, they're huge files, they've got a lot of variability in them, but when you present them to someone who wants to get some information out of them, you don't need all that variability. So you can cut it down to just a certain number of colours and display it that way. And the way the NBIC displayed it, they only had 8 colours. So I thought, well, let's turn this into a classified raster. So let me take one of these rasters. We'll just work with the baseline weather scenario. So drop that in. So it's a cloud optimized geotiff, comes in straight away. As I said, it's like 36 gigabyte raster. Now I'm going to match their rendering style, and I'm going to turn it into a classified raster. So I go into the color, and I'll choose the plasma color table, which is similar to what they had. Now I'm going to go into my data transform editor. I'll add a new data transform called Fireline Intensity, and I'm going to choose the Jenks natural breaks and put in 16 ranges. So now I've got it's looked at the statistics of the data, and it's created 16 ranges based on those statistics, which give us a good spread of color over the data set. Now I'll turn off the full color table option. We just want individual colors per range, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to export that to a legend file. So we'll call it say test 1. Yes. And that's going out to a hard disk, so it's a bit slow. Then it exports and it creates this legend file, which is just a little text file. So you can see that we have 16 ranges with the colors burnt into them. You can then come and edit this file and, for example, change these labels or neaten up these data ranges as you see fit. So we have a legend file. So now we can get out of there. Close and discard. And we'll go into classify raster operation. So I'll choose my cloud optimized geotiff as input. I'll make a classified raster output. I'm going to use the legend that I just created as the going to use that to define the classification table and the classification data map. Then hit OK. Now, I've created a virtual raster which is doing classification on the fly. So we're linking back to that cloud optimized GeoTIFF, but we're classifying on the fly. And if we go to our tooltip, it'll tell us that it's class 9, class 0, class 10, etc. Now I can go to the export raster operation. I'll just choose that classified raster as the input. I'll output to an MRR with quality compression, hit OK, and now it's going to export and convert that cloud optimized GeoTIFF of continuously variable fireline intensity out to a classified raster where we have just 16 classes which map classified intensity into those classes. So that will go ahead and create some files. So let's so the result from that, you can see here I have these files. So they're about 5.87 gigabytes in total, whereas we started with 320 gigabytes of downloaded cloud optimized GeoTIFF files. So we've reduced the size of the data sets by a factor of about 60, which is good if you just want to provide a product to somebody that they can download and then interpret from. So let's take a look at the data. Just open an algorithm here. So we have 3 weather scenarios: a baseline scenario, which I think is the current weather scenario. Then there's 2 future scenarios, and then they compute it for a fire repeat of frequency of 20 years or 50 years or 100 years. So I've got the baseline weather scenario here for 20 years, 50 years and 100 years. So let's just see what that looks like and see what the differences are. So I'll zoom in here to my house. Where's my house? My house is about here. And I'll just turn on flipping. So we are at, let's go to, so there's baseline 20. I'll go backwards this way. So there's 20-year repeat, 50-year repeat, 100-year repeat. So you can see that fireline intensity is increasing. So the colors are becoming more yellow. So we go 20, 50, 100. So as you expect, you get the potential of a more intense fire over a 100-year period than a 50-year period. So that's 50, 100, and you can see the changes here in this intensity, which happens to be near my house. So 20, 50, 100. Okay, so have a look at the weather scenarios. So here we've got so now I'm looking at 20-year data for the baseline weather scenario, future 4.5, whatever that is, and future 8.5, and I can't tell you what these different scenarios are, but let's have a look at how things change on those scenarios. So I'll just go back to my house again. Over here in Copacabana, at the Copa. And we'll turn on swapping. So there is the baseline weather scenario. There's the future 4.5. There's the future 8.5. So from 20 to 4.5, you can see there's quite an increase in fireline intensity. See how it goes, quite a lot more yellow. And then from 4.5 to 8.5, it's not so clear what happens. There seems to be some decrease in this area, but in other areas you'll see an increase. So it's not so dramatic change from future 4.5 scenario to the future 8.5 scenario. So they're the different scenarios. So I'll put the baseline scenario, I mean, if I'm interested in looking at what's going to happen to my house, I'm not interested in 100 years' time. I want to know what's the likelihood of a fire within the next 20 years. So I think, the baseline existing weather scenario is the thing to look at over the next 20 years. And I'll put that up onto my website. At the robertsgeospatial.com.au, go to the resources menu and the data page, and you'll find various rasters in there, and I'll put a post on there containing the baseline weather scenario 20-year repeat, and so you'll be able to look at this data yourself. So let's just explore it a little bit. Bring up an algorithm here. So I've got various layers here. So let's firstly go to my house, and then I'll go to my dad's house, and then I might go to my friend's house. So here's Copacabana, and my house is up in here in this blue section, which is good, right? But then you have this great big yellow and orange section around the outside, and I can see those trees from here, and they represent a fire risk, and significant, fire line burn intensity. But they are to the northeast of my house. And in Sydney, when a bushfire comes, we expect it to come from the northwest. So anything that's off to the northeast, I'm not so worried about. Of course, it's also right next to the ocean. So I'm not so concerned about that as a fire risk to my property over here. But I'm more concerned about this area out here to the northwest, where I would expect a fire to come from. So, you've got these significant areas of fire intensity up here. This is at the Kincumber Mountain Reserve, and you can see that there is a pathway for a fire to burn through from this reserve into Copacabana and into my suburbs. So that's where the risk comes from. But I would consider that to be not particularly high risk. I'll clean my gutters out, and I will keep all the scrub down, but I think that's not a really significantly high risk of fire. And indeed, there aren't any recorded fires in Copacabana on the historical record. I think there have been fires, but there's no actual record of them, so perhaps they've been quite rare. That's my house. Let's go over to my dad's house. I know you're watching, Dad. So go over to South Australia, and here we are in Scott Creek. So Dad lives here in this nice blue section, but all around there is significant fire intensity. So I'll just turn on, what have I got here? Turn on a bit of terrain shading, so you can see that this is a hill and this is a hill. Maybe we'll just push that out to a 3D map and we'll just look at it in 3D. So the house is down here. There's a significant hill on this side and a significant hill on this side and this side. Now, a few years ago, they had a very significant fire, and it burned out in this section here. And it burned from the east slowly down this hill, and they were able to stop it at this road. So again, if it's coming from the right direction, things are manageable. On the other hand, in South Australia, when you've got a hot northerly wind, then you've got bad bushfire conditions. And in that scenario, it would come down through this very high intensity fireline data through here along this ridge, and then come down into the valley. They still have a pretty nice buffer there. Let me just do a distance measurement. So from there through to there, they've got about 330 meters between them and the and the worst of the firefront. Fireline intensity there of 120,000 to 160,000 kilowatts per square meter, which is 120 to 160 megawatts of energy per square meter. So that's a lot of energy. Yes, that's going to cook you. That's going to flash fry you. Anyway, so wandering around south through the Adelaide Hills, you can see some areas where there is significant risk. So for example, if you're on Auckland Hill Road here, let's push this out to 3D so we can just see the scenario. Whoops, let me grab that. So you're at the top of a significant hill. The fire is going to come from the northwest, is going to burn up these valleys and up this hill, and your house is sitting right here at the top and you're cooked. So significant fire danger for any properties that are along that road, for example. And looking around the hills, you can just see the spots where there is significant danger. And I go out here where my friend owns a property out near Cuddly Creek, and they experience, so they're in this area here. You can see that, let me take the intensity off again. You can see that a lot of yellow, very high fireline intensity, and plenty of yellow for the fire to burn through from the northwest in order to get to your house. And they experienced a fire a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and that was a very traumatic experience for them. It was a terrible fire. So you can take a look at this data. Of course, on their website they say explicitly that you shouldn't use it for this purpose, but it's the purpose for which it was designed. So let's take a look, and you can go around and just see where significant danger lies, and perhaps use it to plan your own future. For example, let's come over to Melbourne. Here's Melbourne, nice and blue. If you're living in the suburbs, that's fine. And then you can see these areas where you've got high fire intensity, and if you zoom in, you'll see town names like Kinglake, for example, which are now burnt into the psyche of Australians from a fire about 15 years ago through this area, which destroyed many lives as well as properties. Over in Sydney, here's the Sydney Basin, this big sort of kidney where there isn't significant fire risk, but of course you go up into the Blue Mountains and then you have plenty of fire risk. And if you're living up in the Blue Mountains, of course you know all about fire. But Katoomba and Wentworth, probably not so bad, whereas places like Hazelbrook and Falconbridge and so forth, have these significant areas of bush with high fire intensity and potential, and they're sitting up on the ridge line and right in the firing line of any fires that come from the northwest through that bush. So as I said, I'll put this data up on my website. You will need ProRaster to view this data. You can go to the Microsoft Store and you'll find ProRaster Scientific, ProRaster Premium and ProRaster Essential. You can download any one of those products and get a 7-day free trial, and you can use that to explore the data. And once that free trial expires, you're of course welcome to purchase the software. So thanks for watching.